In this video, I'm going to talk about the 5 vital factors to enhance your physique and your performance. And if you're new here, I'm Blair. I'm an online coach that specializes in helping people build lean, athletic bodies so they can do the stuff they want to do without second guessing themselves. One of the main reasons why I like having these as just the big 5 main factors that I use with all my clients as well is it simplifies things. And I think, you know, even talking from my own personal experience, I remember when I was first really getting into lifting and fitness and all this stuff, I would look at things like Men's Health, and even then I would flick through the magazine and I would think to myself, like, there is no possible way that I can implement everything in this magazine. Like, it's just impossible. But on every page there was probably like 2 or 3 things that you need to do to, you know, get leaner abs or build bigger shoulders or whatever it is, right? And I was like, there's just no way that you can do all of this at once, but it's just overloading you with different advice from all different angles. And I think a lot of people still get that when it comes to fitness. Like, it's hard to pick fewer things to focus on. And I think actually my job as a coach now, I see a lot of it as kind of like, if you're my client, instead of getting you to focus on all this shit, I want you to focus on this, like give you tunnel vision as to the important factors we need to focus on. So yes, we do track a lot of other variables just to make sure that, you know, things like your energy's in the right place, digestion's going well, your sleep's going good, and kind of all the fundamentals in that aspect. But really, these 5 things are, to me, these are the biggest needle movers, and these are the things that if we get right week after week, we will be making progress, or we will be able to change one of them to keep making progress the next week. Number 1 is training. So it's really, really important that we track our training. Now, I used to be guilty of this, and I know there's a lot of guys that I work with that before they started working with me, they would just not track what training they were doing. They would go to the gym, whether it's just doing a class here or there, going in and just maybe jumping from machine to machine. They know they're gonna work their chest, let's face it, chest and tris probably, but they wouldn't even have a set structure as to what that looked like. And if they did go and do the same session week after week, which was rare, they probably wouldn't actually remember what it is they did the week before well enough in terms of weights, reps, and sets to actually repeat that and make sure they're progressing week on week. So for me, it's really, really important that when we are tracking our training, you know, we're actually writing down, first of all, you know, the exercise you're doing, how many sets of the exercise you're doing, what your rep range is, what the tempo maybe is, what the rest is, just so we can actually standardize it so that next week when you go in and repeat that same session, then you actually know whether you have progressed or not, or you know in your head what you need to do in order to progress. And yes, you should be repeating the same sessions multiple weeks in a row, because otherwise you're not gonna know if you're making progress, and also you're not gonna give your body any time to adapt to the sessions and the stimulus that you're throwing at it if you're just constantly changing your workouts. So that's why for myself and all the guys I work with, it's really important that we are training consistently, but we're also tracking that training so we know exactly what we've done and then what we need to do the following week in order to beat that in a way and actually continuously give our body the stimulus it needs to adapt in the way we want it, whether that's to grow more muscle tissue, whether that's to lose body fat, whether that's to get stronger, whether that's to get fitter. It doesn't matter what it is, the tracking of the training still needs to happen, which is why for me it's, you know, of the big 5 factors here, it's probably number 1, because at the end of the day, even if you do get your calories in check and you get your protein in check and you get all these other factors sorted out, if you're not training and tracking your training the right way, then you're never going to end up with the look that most of the guys I work with want, right? That kind of muscular, defined, lean, athletic look. If you don't train the right way, you ain't going to get it. So for me, training is the number 1 thing, and it needs to be tracked. Number 2 is calories. So for me, the second most important factor when it comes to enhancing your physique and your performance is going to be your overall calorie intake on a daily basis. Now, I think it's probably worthwhile looking at this on average. You know, if one day you're taking in 2,000 calories and the next day you're taking in 4,000 calories and then you're 2,000 and then you're 4,000 and it's a bit all over the place, then I would look at an average across the week, because that's what's going to be more important. Nonetheless, it's important that we have an idea as to how much calories you're taking in on average on a daily basis, because when we know what that number is, we can adapt it and we can change it based off of whether you want to improve your physique from a body fat standpoint, add some muscle mass, or improve your performance. We can change the amount of food that you're taking in to put your body in a more favorable position to achieve whatever that goal is. So for myself and pretty much all the guys I work with, I do ask them at least at the beginning for 3 to 6 months to track their calories. One, so they develop the skill of actually learning how to track their food properly, but two, because I feel like you learn so much from actually tracking your calories. You learn to be able to look at a plate and estimate roughly how many calories are going to be on that plate, know how you would track it, and again, it leads you to becoming far more intuitive with your food down the line. And an analogy I like to use, that I think makes a lot of sense here, is if you think about when you were first learning to drive, right? For me anyway, you know, I remember I was like, I'd be sweaty, I'd be nervous. You've got like so many things going on, your mirrors, your signals, you've got this person next to you judging everything, you're stalling the car all the time. Like, that was me. And there's a lot going on and you're really hyper focused on what you're doing, right? Whereas, you know, after you've been driving for a couple of years, you don't even think about it. It's just second nature. You just get in the car and you just drive and you go where you're going without a second thought, right? And I honestly think that that is so similar with the process with nutrition. At the beginning, when you're tracking your calories, it's faffy, it's annoying, you know, it's quite overwhelming. Things take a bit longer because you're having to weigh things before you cook it, and it is annoying. But if you get through that stage, it becomes much more like second nature, and you get to a point where you can kind of intuitively eat because you know, based off your experience, that you're eating the right amount and you're getting enough of the good stuff in. So for me, that's why calories are super important, because they are going to dictate a lot of what our physique ends up looking like, and they are going to dictate as to, you know, how much effort we're going to be able to put into training sessions and then put out in certain performances that you're trying to do. So super important that we are tracking those. And if you actually want to know a little bit more about, you know, how I go about eating and tracking my calories, I've got 2 full day of eating videos that I've posted so far. One of them is kind of like my normal day and what I would normally eat and how I would go about sort of tracking that. You can check that one out. And I've also got another one, which I think is even more interesting. Easy for me to say, that I'm actually eating out every single meal of the day, and then talking through how I would go about tracking these meals out, because I know that's a common problem for a lot of people out there. So anyway, go and check those out, and then I'll come back with point number 3. Number 3 is protein. So the reason why I've included protein as number 3 in the vital factors is because to me it's the most important macronutrient to track, right? It doesn't matter if your goal is aesthetic based, where you're trying to lose body fat, you're trying to increase muscle mass, or you're just trying to kind of, you know, go through a bit of a main gaining period, or if your goal is performance-based, protein is still going to be very, very important. From an aesthetic standpoint, if we are trying to lose body fat, then protein is going to be really important because it's going to help us feel fuller for longer. We get more thermic effect of food when it comes from protein than any other macronutrient. So again, it's going to help us sort of burn more calories throughout the day by eating a higher protein diet. And then likewise, even if the goal is to add size, we need to make sure that we're giving our body enough protein so that when we're training hard and we're breaking down muscle fibers in the gym, our body can go through protein synthesis regularly across the day and actually repair itself and, you know, have the raw materials to build new muscle. And then beyond that, if the goal is more performance-based, it's still important that we're getting a good amount of protein in the system for similar reasons around recovery. So we know protein is important for both physique and performance-based goals, but even beyond that, just from my experience of working with, you know, so many people over the last 7-8 years, protein is probably the one thing that I see a lot of people struggle with, in a sense of they're not eating enough of it. So that's why I think it's really important that we track it, for the similar reasons to calories, in a sense of, because we track it, we know if we're hitting the right amount or if we're just below. And if we're just below, we know we need to factor in more into our daily diets. So overall, beyond the classic protein makes you feel fuller for longer, we definitely want to be tracking it and making sure we're eating it enough for everything from general bodily functions to recovery to muscle growth. Number 4 is step count. So the main reason why I've included steps as one of these 5 vital factors is because it's just such a good sign of your general activity level. And when we are trying to go through specific phases, especially a fat loss phase, then if you could increase your general activity, especially doing things that aren't really going to be too taxing on your energy systems and on your nervous systems, i.e. walking, then it's only going to be more beneficial for you. And I want to tell a little story to exemplify this. So for myself, I went through a phase where my steps were pretty damn poor. And, you know, because I feel, like, oh, it's fine, I'm a coach, I'm a fitness person, I don't need to do that many steps, I've kind of got a grip on things, which is true to an extent. Like, it wasn't detrimental to me at all, but I started looking after Dudley, the family dog, for about a month, and he has forced me to get my steps dramatically up. And so far today, I mean, it's now 24 minutes past 12, and I am just tickling the ball sack of 9,000 steps for the day, which honestly, previous to this, I would go through a whole day and I'd maybe be hitting like 3,000-4,000 steps, because I'd be sitting at home in the office, tickling the ball sack, working away, drive to the gym, do my session, tickling the ball sack, drive home, continue working away. I'd be lucky if I got out for a walk in the evening. And it's funny because whilst there's the obvious benefits from a fat loss standpoint, and I know right now I'm going through the kind of aesthetic athlete cut, so I'm having a lot of benefits from that angle, but I notice benefits also in my mood, and I also notice benefits in terms of my productivity. I think when you are forced to take yourself away from work, and for me it's to walk the dog, so taking them out in the morning, taking them out for a long walk and a few shorter walks throughout the day, especially even just like toilet breaks with the guy, then it forces me to be more productive with the time that I am actually in the flat. And as I say, I come back feeling more refreshed, my mood is in a better place. So I guess the main reason why I've chosen steps here is because it is going to be a pretty big factor to determine the amount of success that you're going to have when it comes to probably more predominantly physique-based goals in this setting. But it can go beyond that, and it can be more of a productivity and a mental boost as well. So when it comes to steps, I always think it's worth having an idea of what you're doing on a daily basis, because then you know whether you should be looking to increase them or in some cases looking to decrease them. Because at the same time, if you're constantly doing 20,000 steps every single day and it's not part of your job and you're just forcing yourself to go out and do that, then if you all of a sudden half that and your diet doesn't change, you could be facing a few problems there. So for me, it's important that we track how many steps you're doing on a daily basis on average, so that we know what the number is, and again, we can manipulate it based off what the goal is. Number 5 is cardio. So let me just define what I mean by cardio in this sense. And this is just what I say to myself and all the guys that I work with, right? If I have any sort of conditioning as part of my workout, or I program conditioning as part of my client's workout, which will be, maybe some sort of finisher at the end of their session, I don't include that in what I would call cardio, right? For me, cardio is very much over and above what you would normally do. So if I use myself as an example here, for most of my training sessions, there will probably be some form of conditioning at the end of the session. That's not counted. But then let's say on a Sunday, it's a nice day, and I decide, I'm gonna go for a run. I'm gonna go for a 5 to 7K easy jog. Then however long that takes me, let's say it's, I don't know, anywhere like about half an hour. So 30 minutes of running, I would count that as my extra cardio for the week. Now, I think it's important that we are tracking things like this, because similar to what I said about steps, if we know what our sort of extra general activity is across the week, then we know if we need to increase it or decrease it based off what our goal is. And again, these can have benefits from both a physique and a performance standpoint. From a physique standpoint, you might just want to start doing a little bit more general activity to help put your body in more of a deficit, so you're going to lose more body fat at a slightly faster rate. And even from a muscle gaining standpoint, I still think it's worthwhile including a little bit of cardio, especially if you're not doing as much conditioning in your actual training sessions, because it's just going to help keep your body more fit. And also it's going to help you actually push yourself a little bit harder when you are, pushing to failure in a lot of the working sets that you should be doing. Also, when it comes to performance from a strength and a fitness standpoint, I think doing some steady state cardio is generally going to be a good thing. Now, there's always going to be diminishing returns. If you go absolutely nuts with this and you're trying to do way too much cardio, then yes, there's going to be diminishing returns from a recovery standpoint. But generally speaking, if you're doing a good amount of additional cardio throughout the week that is steady state, that's relatively low effort, we're talking like zone 2, low zone 3 stuff here, then that will have knock-on positive effects to your general overall fitness levels, and in some cases, even your strength as well. So again, for me, it's important to track how much extra activity or extra cardio you are doing throughout the week, so we know what that currently is. And again, we can manipulate it, we can increase it, we can decrease it based off of what the goal is at that point in time. So those are the 5 vital factors to enhance both your physique and your performance. Now remember, there are so many different things that you can focus on when it comes to your health, your fitness, your strength, your physique, your performance, all this stuff. For me, those 5 things are the tunnel vision ones. If you focus on those specific factors, you track them, and you're then able to change them and manipulate them based off what your goal is at any one time, you can be confident that you can make progress on a consistent basis. And if you stop making progress, you will probably find if you tweak one of those things or 2 of those things, you'll be able to get back to making pretty consistent, steady progress. So if you've enjoyed this video and you've taken stuff from it, as always, please subscribe, please like the video, share it with a friend, and I'll see you in the next one.